Penn State finds another hidden gem in the class of 2026. Alex Haskell commits to the Nittany Lions for the class of 2026. And this was more than just your average recruiting win.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football recruiting, and thank you so much for checking out another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, the #1 Penn State sports podcast out there. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show. Friendly reminder, be a part of the conversation down in the comments section as the Nittany Lions land a hidden gem, underrated to say the very least. Alex Haskell, defensive lineman out of the Philadelphia area, commits to the Nittany Lions in the class of 2026. This is a massive win, not only because of the prospect, the caliber of prospect that he is, despite what the recruiting rankings say. They will catch up in due time. But there's a lot of other boxes that Penn State checks here, which I'm going to explain throughout the episode and why this ultimately happened and what Haskell is bringing to Penn State. So let's talk about that first, because Haskell, the prospect, he very well could be one of the top prospects in this class of 2026 for Penn State. It says 3-star on his recruiting profile. Do not buy that. Do not buy that. He is much better than that. Haskell is a strong side defensive end. He's going to be, at least that's where he projects. You could move him to defensive tackle. And then Alex Haskell's recruitment was interesting to me because he's severely underrated. Michigan was pushing hard in this recruitment. So that's one of the things. This is why. This is another box that Penn State checks here. You keep an in-state prospect in-state, but you also fend off the likes of Michigan. So that's number one, is that you beat Michigan when they were really pushing hard to land Haskell. So you beat the Wolverines for this one. You get a really quality prospect in Haskell that's going to do a lot. Kudos to Dion Barnes here, but I think there was more to this recruitment than just Dion Barnes, and I'll tell you why. But Haskell, high motor, great at block shedding, already aggressive, just knows how to fight with his hands. He really does have the complete tool set as a defensive lineman, and he's versatile. It's the versatility. Defensive tackle, strong side defensive end. I don't think Penn State's going to box him in, because when I was following this recruitment, he actually did a sit-down interview with Michigan 24/7. And he explained that I want to go to a school where I'm going to have all of my attributes utilized, where I'm going to be able to use in a versatile role. So maybe that is lining up inside and rushing through the interior, or being a defensive end. It sounds like he wants to be a defensive end and a strong side defensive end, because he's currently listed at 6'4", 265 pounds. But really, this guy moves so well for his size. He looks like he's a weak side defensive end where he's a speed pass rusher at times. I have to remind myself that this guy does weigh around 265, 270 pounds, because he moves like somebody that weighs 230, 240 pounds. The acceleration, the agility, the ability to change speeds very quickly, the power, it jumps off of the tape for Alex Haskell. That's why I have no idea why he's listed as a 3-star. I can guarantee each and every one of you that Haskell is going to jump up the rankings. This is not just your everyday 3-star prospect, which is why Michigan was pushing so hard for him. So you get that recruiting win there. You keep Haskell in state. You fend off a Big Ten foe that was pushing hard for him. He talked about location. That was a big deal. He said that if he was going to go anywhere for his school, that being around friends and family was important to him. So it helps that Penn State is nearby, but that Michigan was kind of the furthest. So he wasn't going to go to the California or Texas or anything like that. He had an offer from Ohio State. Ohio State was on, but his top 3 were really Penn State, Syracuse, Michigan. It was really, I really do think it was down to Penn State and Michigan. And at one point in time, Michigan did think, I really think they believed that they were going to win this recruitment, that it seemed like all signs were pointing to Michigan. So Penn State ultimately came from behind here. So Penn State lands more than just a quality prospect. You beat Michigan in the process. I mean, Michigan reporters were comparing him to the likes of Mason Graham. If you don't know who Mason Graham is, Graham was just drafted by the Cleveland Browns, number 5 overall, first round in this past draft. I'm not here to argue that Haskell is going to be a top 5 NFL draft pick or that he's going to be that he's going to live up to that, but it speaks to the potential that he has if he continues on this trajectory, that he has the versatility, he has similar athleticism, similar traits to the likes of a player that just went top 5. But it's more than just that. It's not only the recruiting win. It's not just about the prospect that Alex Haskell is. It's not about beating Michigan. It's also about what Penn State does here with the Philadelphia area. Penn State doesn't have the same kind of recruiting success that they do in Pittsburgh and just Philadelphia. When you compare the two, it's not even close. Penn State really gets a lot of recruiting wins from Pittsburgh, but now do you start to chip away at that? Do you start to chip away at Philadelphia? Do you begin to bridge that gap and create some more relationships and possibly more recruiting wins that you'll definitely need in the future? Dion Barnes, being from Philadelphia and being the defensive line coach for Penn State, this one makes sense. But it's now Jim Knowles factored into the equation as well. Knowles is a St. Joe's Prep grad. So if you can start building better relationships, not just relationships, better relationships with the Philadelphia area, with St. Joe's Prep in particular, because that's one of the football powerhouses in the state of Pennsylvania. And if you have Jim Knowles to help out with that, in addition to Dion Barnes, and this attention now that Penn State really wants to put towards Philadelphia, they want to have a stronger presence in the eastern part of the state. New Jersey as well, but that's a separate conversation. They want to have that same kind of presence that they do in Pittsburgh. They want that in Philadelphia. So this, I think, begins that. Because Haskell could have gone to Michigan. He could have gone to Syracuse. He had an offer from Ohio State. Now, that recruitment obviously didn't go the way that it did, but Penn State ends up with a Philadelphia area prospect. And that's why I think this recruitment is more than just, hey, they landed a really landed a really good defensive lineman here. No, you start creating a stronger presence in Philadelphia. You beat Michigan and you get Alex Haskell. So now let's talk about Haskell, more of what the plan is for Penn State, how he factors in, what he can bring to the team, and talk a little bit more about why I'm so sure that Haskell will pan out for the Nittany Lions. And that's coming up next here on the show. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You'll get affordable and portable gaming going forward. You can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. And if you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable, and it's easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head over to Amazon.com/FireTVLockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. To wrap up the show, as always, with a commitment, we'll talk about generally what the class of 2026 now looks like and what to expect in the not-too-distant future. Back to Haskell, though. Haskell is super athletic. Like I said, I've already talked about just how speedy he is for someone that is truly a strong side defensive end. You could play him at defensive tackle, too. It's a win either way, because you bulk him up 20 pounds or so, and he could be a solid defensive tackle. If you want him to be that true nose guard type of player, Penn State wasn't going to get that, and Haskell was up front. Again, I'm going back to the interview that Michigan 24/7 had, and they talked about, and Haskell openly admitted, probably not going to be somebody that you expect to be 300 pounds, 310, 325. That's just not me. I want to play defensive end, but I also want to be moved around in the defense. So that's where Haskell projects is this kind of player that is going to have so many different responsibilities if things project the way they do and that they pan out. And Jim Knowles' defense is perfect for that, actually. Jim Knowles' defense actually asks a lot of the defensive ends, particularly at the strong side defensive end. Dennis-Sutton was making plays even before that and, dropping back into coverage and doing things like that. So Haskell kind of fits what they're looking for at that strong side defensive end. But if you need to move him into the interior, you can do both. So either way, Penn State has a prospect now in the fold for the class of 2026 that really is going to be able to be that multifaceted player that's going to be asked to do a lot, again, if everything pans out. But that's the way he's projected. He's already has college-ready size. 6'4", 265 pounds. I want to speak to why I'm so confident that he will be one of the better prospects to pan out in the class of 2026. When Haskell was going through these training camps, there's a lot of these scouting camps that Penn State will host. And when he was a sophomore, when he was going into a sophomore season, he was going up against the likes of, a lot of Penn State fans will recognize Cooper Cousins. Michael Carroll, you might remember Michael Carroll committed to Alabama. He was one of Penn State's top targets in the class of 2025, ended up being a 5-star offensive lineman. Carroll is really good. And so is Cooper Cousins. Cooper Cousins ended up being a 5-star offensive lineman, according to some of the recruiting sites. Haskell was winning reps, or at least he claims to. He claims that he was winning reps against those guys when they were older, when they were veterans in high school, and he was still, fairly new, right? He finished his freshman season. He was going into a sophomore year. So he was behind them in terms of development and eligibility, and he was winning reps against Cooper Cousins. So I guess we're going to ask Cooper Cousins about it. Michael Carroll, we can't really ask Carroll. He's at Alabama, but Alex Haskell to win reps against proven college players at this very moment is a rising senior in high school. And this dude's just a 3-star. I have a hard time buying it. I just think the scouting's behind. And that's why Penn State does its own independent scouting. They hold these training camps. They hold these high school events because they want to see, okay, which prospects are not being rated properly. Penn State does its own independent scouting. They don't ignore. I don't think they ignore On3, 24/7, Rivals, etc. But they do their own independent scouting. And it's why a lot of the times, and this is really going to be the case with 2026, you are going to see a number of prospects jump up the rankings, and Haskell is one of them. So if he's defeating the likes of Cooper Cousins, if he's winning reps as a guy that's 2 years behind academically in terms of eligibility, going up against Cooper Cousins, going up against a 5-star caliber prospect, drawing comparisons to Mason Graham by Michigan reporters, this tells me everything I need to know about what Penn State is getting in a defensive line prospect. I'm eager to see where he ends up ultimately, because he could fit right into the Dennis-Sutton role, where it's that strong side defensive end, or he could be that athletic defensive tackle that, like Zane Durant, is utilized on all 3 downs. He's not just, he doesn't just plug an area. He doesn't take on double teams necessarily, or he can do that, but he's athletic enough to play all 3 downs, rush the passer. It goes back to the versatility. Penn State just did everything right in this recruitment. They won this recruitment. And Haskell's going to bring a lot to the class of 2026. One of the prospects that I'm a little more eager for overall. There's a lot of good talent in this 2026 class, but I think Haskell in particular is one that Penn State fans should be a little more excited about in this case, because of what he's going to bring. And you can't go wrong if you put him at defensive tackle, if you have him bulk up a little bit, or he might be ready to go as a strong side defensive end right out of the gate as a true freshman. I do believe that. I think that if things continue to trend the way that they do for him, he could play right away. He could be in the rotation for strong side defensive end. Dennis-Sutton will graduate, but That's ultimately at Penn State's discretion where they play him at. Just know that he's either going to be a strong side defensive end or they're going to move him in to be that 3-down pass rushing defensive tackle, similar to either Dennis-Sutton or Zane Durant. And Jim Knowles' defense will maximize Haskell as a player. So it'll be a quick turnaround. Ignore the 3-star rating. Ignore the 3-star rating. That's all I'm gonna say. He's not compared to Mason Graham, a top 5 NFL draft pick by accident. All right, let's speak to the class of 2026 because Penn State continues to add these hidden gem type of prospects, which is only going to boost them at the end of all this when everything's finalized. Are they top 10? I think they can say, I think this group can say that it's trending in the right direction to be a top 10 class in 2026. We'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. You'll get surprising insights. When I started using Monarch for myself, I realized just how much I was spending on things like package deliveries or dining out, groceries, you name it. Now I budget smarter and save more. You'll also get the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. You'll also get easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for, get this, 50% off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Penn State gets commitment number 16 for the class of 2026. Haskell joins a group. Let's focus on the defensive line first and then look at the class as a whole. So Isaac Chukara, similar situation where he's an athletic defensive lineman, defensive tackle, kind of in that same grouping with Haskell, where he could be a strong side defensive end or he bulks up a little bit to be an interior defensive tackle. The immediate comparison, and in terms of the responsibility, I'm not saying that he's going to be just like Zane Durant, but Chukara kind of projects in that similar role where athletic defensive tackle that can play all 3 downs, similar to Haskell, but I think more likely he might be a strong side defensive end. That's just my opinion there. Penn State needs defensive ends in this class, though, and they're waiting on the likes of Luke Wafel, who is the younger brother of Owen Wafel. Penn State is a priority in that recruitment. They're one of the top teams in that recruitment. I expect them to land the likes of Luke Wafel. Recent news here, actually. 5-star defensive end released his top 4, and Penn State was one of the schools. That's Carter Meadows out of the DC area. If Penn State is able to really pull that one off, and the other schools that are listed, Ohio State, Michigan, and South Carolina, in addition to Penn State, Carter Meadows would be a heck of an addition to the class of 2026. We'll see how that one ultimately goes. Again, Michigan is there once again. Ohio State cracks the Final Four here. South Carolina, SEC school, but Penn State has been recruiting Meadows for quite some time. I can't say that I'm as confident as the Luke Wafel recruitment, but I think that Penn State is strongly in the mix here. So I can confidently say that this class is trending to really be a top 10 class. Fringe, I think fringe. Right now, according to On3, they're listed at 10th as we speak. But Penn State can certainly solidify that position and be probably 8, 9, or 10. I don't think top 5 is a little bit of a stretch, but they would need to land commitments from Carter Meadows, Brandon Arrington. We talked about Brandon Arrington quite a bit on this show. And there's a reason for that, because Penn State is right there in his recruitment as well. But it's more so about the fact that there are a number of prospects that are going to see a jump in the overall recruiting rankings when everything's finalized. Peyton Falzone, for example. I think Daniel, that's the quarterback commit, second quarterback commit in this class of 2026. They have Troy Hune. I think Troy Hune could move back up the rankings as well. So 2 quarterback prospects that will see a bump at the end of the day. Defensive end from West Virginia, Daniel Jennings, I think is underrated. Terry Wiggins and Matthew Lama, who just committed at linebacker. These were priority additions for Penn State, and they landed them both. Why is Penn State going after 3-star, fringe 4-star prospects? Because that's not how Penn State is internally scouting them. I'll add another one. Jasir Rogers, wide receiver commit. Rogers has all the athleticism in the world, just doesn't play the best competition right now in the state of Delaware. So as they gain more recognition, there's more of these summer camps, there's more of these open opportunities for the scouts to go see them. That's when the recruiting rankings will reflect everything. And as they go through another senior season and these commitments dominate their relative competition, that's where you will see it primarily show up there. But when everything's finalized, Penn State will see a number. I just listed over 6 commits that are going to see their recruiting ranking definitely have a bump by the end of the season. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Appreciate your feedback. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out another episode here on the show. If you are new, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. We talk about everything here over on Locked On Nittany Lions. Penn State football, Penn State recruiting, Penn State wrestling, Penn State basketball, you name it. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And again, thank you so much for checking out another edition of Locked On Nittany Lions and making us your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, you got to check out The Portal. It is Locked On's exclusive show devoted entirely to high school football recruiting and the transfer portal. It's hosted by Brian Smith. Brian does an incredible job. Get the recruiting insights, all the latest in the ever-changing landscape of college football with Locked On's The Portal. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.